Imagine a situation when you woke up after a long coma and found that the whole world had turned into a solid cemetery full of the living dead. You, like other survivors, do not understand what is happening and how to get everything back on track. Now your only task is to stay alive with your group, making all the sacrifices to achieve this. The question arises, how to survive in this situation? This is what we will try to understand by analyzing the first of the 11 seasons of the famous TV series The Walking Dead. A sheriff's deputy named Rick Grimes inadvertently grabs a bullet that disables him for a while. After regaining consciousness, he notices something strange. The flowers by the bed are completely dried up, the clock has stopped, and the equipment does not work. Then he tries to get up and call the nurse, but no one responds, so he has to quench his thirst on his own. After leaving the ward, Rick discovers a trashed corridor, non-working phones and a brutally mutilated corpse of a woman. Blood and bullet marks on the walls are reinforced by a strange locked door with the inscription "Dead" inside, from which someone is trying to get out. Panic takes its toll and our Font, without waiting for the de-energized elevator, decides to go down the dark fire escape, where it smells decomposition. However, it's even worse outside, because rotting corpses are stacked in the backyard of the hospital, and a little further away a military camp with equipment has settled, but without the military themselves. In such a situation, it might seem to a person after waking up that he has fallen into a real hell, but it's worth pulling yourself together and trying to figure out what is happening. We woke up and see all the signs of some terrible emergency. The equipment is de-energized and even the clock, which should run on a battery for up to 3 years, has stopped. And judging by the fact that Rick's beard is clearly less than 3 years old, we can make an assumption that Amy was used here. And since no one responds to our cries, the first thing to do was to check what is outside the window, because that way we would be able to see something important, giving a hint about what is happening. Besides, this way we would be able to orient ourselves and understand where we are at all. Judging by the corridor, it is possible to delete all natural disasters from the list of theoretical emergencies. There are no cracks from an earthquake or storm, no traces of water from a flood and no soot from a fire. And if you pay attention to the bullet holes and blood, then we can assume that someone was shot here, perhaps it was an act of terrorism, or maybe there was fighting here. As for the mutilated corpse, I would have thought that it was done by dogs or other wild animals, because her neck was bitten, and her body was clearly eaten. Therefore, it is worth arming yourself with some kind of stick or even a piece of cloth to scare away animals. But with a locked door, everything is not so clear and it needs to be fixed. Rick had to make sure he was safe and raise his voice, hoping to get an answer from the other side, because people were obviously locked up there. I want to remind you that there is no such thing as zombies in the universe of the series, no one knows about them there, so I suggest trying to establish a connection with the locked ones. In the end, taking into account the above and the military equipment outside, we can assume that there is a war going on, and behind the locked door there are prisoners of war who were sentenced to death. Quite a working theory to begin with. But it was also worth examining the tents in the camp to find food and clothes, as well as some documents or newspapers from which information could be gleaned. And all this is neat and on the tables, we still have no idea what's going on. On the way home, Rick stumbles upon a bicycle and his first walker, who is a recumbent corpse without legs and from whom it was not difficult to escape. At home, he tries to find his wife and son, but to no avail. And on the street, he is accidentally hit by some boy, whose father kills one walker with a shot. And in the form of a needy Freeman takes Rick to his place, where he explains to him in a nutshell what is happening. Well, there's about the fact that some time ago an epidemic of right-standing corpses broke out in the world, about the danger of their bites and the fact that you can only kill them by damaging the brain. Well, in principle, our man, raised on the films of Romer and Raimi, would not have left unnoticed the fact that the most ordinary zombie apocalypse happened. Well, that's it. Because of the sound of a gunshot, a crowd of walkers came to their shelter at night, who hit the car by turning on its alarm, which attracted even more of their own kind. Among the corpses, Freeman's wife also wanders, who has recently fallen ill and whom he cannot kill in any way because of his feelings. Having a well-equipped shelter is wonderful, and as we can see, Freeman and his son are not bad here. Only now Freeman is treading on his own heels, spending bullets on one walker, attracting others with noise, while his son uses a silent shovel for this. And apparently, Freeman just doesn't have any melee weapons, which is very important. Everyone in the house will have a hammer, a claw hammer or, in the end, a simple block of wood and nails. So in this situation, it was better to take at least a stone or a brick than to attract the horde and other people with a shot. It was also imperative to remove the terminals from the batteries of all the surrounding cars in order to prevent their alarm from being turned on, because this sound certainly would not be ignored by walkers. In the morning, after completing the course of a young bonecracker, Rick once again inspects his house, where he realizes that his family was alive at the time of her disappearance, because there are no family photos anywhere. After that, the heroes replenish their arsenal with weapons from the closed armory of the police station, and it's time to part ways. Freeman tells Rick that his family is most likely in a refugee center in the city of Atlanta, and he himself cannot leave this place yet because of unfinished business. To keep in touch, Rick gives him one police radio, promising to go on the air every morning, after which they leave. Well, on the way to Atlanta, the sheriff kills that recumbent walker with a shot from his big iron. The moment has come to talk about the most important attribute of this series, about Rick Grimes' weapon, about his Colt Python. The fact is that objectively this weapon is not the best choice in the current conditions, when it is necessary to hit as many opponents as possible at short-medium distances as quickly as possible. Of course, the advantages of Python include its ability to shoot armor-piercing, which, of course, is very necessary to punch the heads of rotting corpses. The ability to attach a modular sight and accuracy of fire, but the disadvantages include a strong recoil, from which your hands will be like jelly, a tendency to breakage of the drum mechanism, which can lead to powder burns, difficulties with repairing this boom stick, loud noise of a shot, and most importantly, this shit is very heavy. Yes, it's time for them to beat walkers to death like a brick. In Rick's place, it would be worth choosing some kind of semi-automatic, like the same Glock that is in service with the Georgia State Police, where he is now. A revolver is a bad choice, at least because of its combat rate of fire, because having only 6 shots in the clip so that you can then reload the drum 1 round at a time while a horde of walkers is coming at you is just ass. In general, you should not show off your big iron, when it would be much more practical to take something simpler. On the way to Atlanta, gasoline runs out, which could have been foreseen in advance and tried to get it drained from the cars of Freeman's shelter, but now we have to go and look for it in the middle of a clear field. Fortunately, it is possible to get to an already unattended house with a car, but without keys. And instead of searching for keys in the house, Rick decides to show off again and, like a true horse thief, tames the domestic horse. He rides it all the way to the city, passing by a whole column of abandoned cars, gasoline from which could greatly help in reviving his own Ford, in which it would be much safer than on a roach. Although, to be honest, I can't imagine at all how it would be possible to drive around in a post-apocalypse city by car, because there will be congestion everywhere. There is devastation and desolation in Atlanta itself, and judging by the abandoned military equipment, there is no smell of a refugee camp here. However, suddenly a helicopter appears, which our Rick jumped after, landing right in the center of a huge horde, which almost ends him, but everything costs the death of the horse, and the sheriff manages to get into the tank, where he locks himself from imminent death. This is to be expected when you undertake to ride an untrained horse in the middle of a pile of rotting walking corpses. And the hero is very lucky that this tank is not an Abrams, in which there is no emergency hatch under the bottom, but a Chieftain, where it is available. And it should be noted that the Chieftain tanks have never been in service with the United States. The creators of the series simply used this tank because they needed to somehow save Rick from his own stupidity so that he would not die already in the first episode of the series. As for Darek, he should not have gone to this city at all without preliminary reconnaissance. In its place, it was necessary to temporarily settle on its outskirts in order to observe the surroundings in search of traces of living people. After all, if there really is a military refugee camp in the city, then we would surely have noticed the light of lanterns at night, patrol squads, smoke from the fire and noise from people. In any case, it was necessary to be extremely careful, riding on a roach, seeing these walkers and this situation. And since the creators of The Water have 10 more seasons left, the freak survives thanks to the help of the clay that has arrived. They get to the group of clay, where Miss Haight immediately points the barrel at Rick for the fact that because of his actions the whole city came to life and began to look for new prey. On the roof of the building, there is a clash between Rodneck and T-Dog on the basis of a racial issue, as a result of which Rick handcuffs Redneck to the pipes. And since the whole building is surrounded from above and below, Rick develops a really ingenious plan based on the theory that walkers react to the smell of a person. The characters bring a walker into the corpse from the back entrance, dismember it and smear it with its insides, which helps Clay and Rick blend in with the crowd. Thus, they try to reach the trucks to help the others get out, but a sudden rain washes off their guts and the walkers notice them again, but they manage to slip away. A well-worked plan. But I don't understand how Rick thought to bring the truck to the others so that all the walkers in the city wouldn't rush to them. Bringing the truck back is generally an unnecessary action, if we take into account that the idea with mimicry is working. There is another corpse lying on the street, and there are two completely lonely walkers walking nearby, with whom it would be possible to cope. There are only 7 people in this building, and if we take into account that one corpse can hide 2 or 3 people, then everything is fine. I agree, the theory had to be confirmed first. Well, Creek and Glenn confirmed it, so I see no reason for the others not to follow their example. And most importantly, now we know for sure that you can hide from these creatures and it's not that difficult, so this technique should be recorded in your arsenal and used in the future. With the help of a sports car and a sound alarm, Clay manages to distract all the walkers from the building and Rick saves the characters by taking them away in a van. But not everyone, because T-Dog accidentally dropped the key to Redneck's handcuffs, which is why he has to leave without it. However, at the last second, the T-Dog thinks of closing the door to the roof with a lock so that the walkers do not climb up to the chained one, and after a while, he begins to rave from dehydration, and then scream in panic, which attracts walkers who try to break into him. But the will to live takes its toll on Fear and Redneck reaches for the hacksaw from the toolbox that T-Dog dropped. A terrible fate awaits this character if he does not hurry up and make the right decision. In general, getting out of handcuffs with at least a simple paper clip or foil is a fairly simple task that anyone can really cope with. If the locking mechanism was not latched, of course, judging by Rick's movements, he did not snap it. But Redneck doesn't have anything at hand that can open the lock. His only option is to reach for the hacksaw and cut the rusty rod to which the second cuff is attached. It is useless to saw handcuffs, they are made of steel, and if you decide to saw off your hand, then most likely you will not succeed, you will simply fall unconscious. So without any drama, we grab a hacksaw on metal and saw a metal pin. Well, then we take a screwdriver or a hammer to get rid of walkers in the door before they attract others with their noise. Well, we use the new mimicry technology developed by Rick and Clay to reach a safe place without any problems. Meanwhile, Clay on a stolen sports car, along with stalkers on a truck, are returning back to their camp of survivors. This camp is run by Rick's former partner and ex-convict skinhead Frank Volena. Of course, he is unhappy that Clay came to the camp with such a noise, fearing that it attracted walkers, but when a live Rick appears, he loses all fervor. Probably because Volena comforted his grieving wife all this time and became almost a father to his son Coral. Cute conversations are interrupted by the screams of children, which were caused by a walker who entered the camp, which, according to the locals, did not happen before. And I can't even imagine why he was here and what could have attracted him. And now Redneck's brother, a former saint from Bundock and future postman Daryl Dick, returns to the camp after hunting. Of course, Rick tells him about what happened and the heroes immediately gather back to the city to rescue Redneck locked on the roof and pick up a bag of weapons dropped from the tank from the arsenal. Rick, Daryl, Clay and T-Dog are sent on a mission. And to deal with the handcuffs, without having keys, they take a bolt cutter with them. But the most important thing is that the heroes don't do, and their lives depend on it, they don't use the damn mimicry that they developed themselves. And in general, for the entire series, the heroes will use this technique 1 or 2 more times, although this is a damn cool maneuver that could naturally turn walkers from a threat into nothing. But then everything would be too boring, of course. On the roof, the heroes discover the door still locked and the severed hand of Redneck, who left through the second exit, but was not noticed by the heroes when they needed him 2 episodes ago. Traces of blood lead the heroes to 2 dead walkers, and then to the kitchen, where Redneck, apparently, burned his stump, and then escaped through the window. No one wants to look for him unarmed, so a plan is quickly being developed to capture Rick's bag, which should have sounded something like this: we take those dead walkers, smear them with their guts, well, just like then, and just take the weapons, and then go look for your brother. Of course not, they just split up, and in the process they are attacked by a Latin gang who takes Clay hostage, leaving the heroes a bag and one of their own. During the interrogation, the kid tells where his people are and the heroes go straight to their lair for the exchange of prisoners. A Latino boss comes out, who demands as an apology for the damage caused to his guys a bag with weapons, for which they hunted in the city. In exchange, he will definitely give the heroes Clay and forgive the offense. They are given time to think and the heroes do not come up with anything better than to go straight into the anthill with their weapons drawn, either to take the Clay and leave without giving up the bag, or to shoot the whole gang. And it was the most ingenious plan of self-sacrifice, in the name of what? Because there are, damn, more than 30 armed people, there is a closed space and there is naturally not an option to conduct a shootout. My god, a shootout of 3 against 30, in the very lair of these 30, surrounded by, damn these 30, it's not even funny, it's just suicide. Rick is a policeman, after all, he must have a cold rational mindset that would surely tell him that it's better to turn on diplomacy, rather than get into trouble. After all, if the shooting had started, the heroes would have simply been torn to shreds before they had time to make 2 shots. The optimal solution would be to apologize to the boss for the current situation and offer to compromise so that no one dies. We exchange prisoners and give half of all the weapons in the bag so that everyone wins and lives. Well, we also promise not to cause each other any more inconvenience on the street. However, the lynching of the heroes does not happen, because out of nowhere a granny appears who asks for help from the bandits. Well, on this basis, everyone calms down, learning that this gang is engaged in the maintenance of a real nursing home, taking care of the elderly. And even the Clay is fine, and that was just a show bluff. Well, the heroes share their weapons, apologize and go back to the truck, which suddenly disappears. All suspicions fall on Redneck, who, for their reasons, will go straight to the camp for revenge. And night falls in the camp and all the comrades gathered around a campfire to eat fish and listen to the philosophical thoughts of the elder. And the deal is violated by dozens of walkers, who begin a gradual mowing down of the extras, until armed Rick and Co come, saving the main characters. Apparently, Redneck has nothing to do with it, but still, as a result, a lot of people died and this causes the breakdown of the face of one of the actresses. Let's talk a little bit about the camp itself and its arrangement, or rather about the absence of this arrangement. We see that in front of the camp there is a forest, and behind there is a cliff and a crater with water. This is both good and bad. It's good that we cannot expect any danger from the quarry, but it's bad that if we miss the threat from the front of the forest, we will be surrounded. As a former policeman, Volana was obliged to guard the perimeter of the camp. The best option would be to place shift sentries at the forest border, who would be able to warn of dangers. It is impossible to do without classic stretch marks with bottles and cans, which could suggest the direction of the enemy's breakthrough. I do not know what Valen was thinking, especially after Glina arrived from the city in his buzzing car, sounds that would attract not only walkers, but also other people who may also pose a threat. After all, just today one walker approached the camp, and this is already a signal that you need to be on your guard here. In the morning, the squad buries its own and burns the walkers. But the problems are only getting worse, because one of the survivors was bitten and this bite becomes the cause of a dispute about what to do next. They even try to kill the infected one, but Rick and Volana stop it by taking the bitten one to a mobile home, where they will keep him for now. Well, during the meeting, a decision is made to withdraw from a more unsafe place and go to the Center for Disease Control with the hope that there are scientists working on solving the issue of walkers. Along the way, however, the bitten one gets worse, so you have to stop. Then he, realizing his situation, asks himself to leave himself so as not to become a burden to others, which the heroes do. I would like to focus on these bites that lead a person to death and conversion. From my previous analysis, you know that a human bite can be even more dangerous than a dog bite, because there are a huge number of different bacteria in a person's mouth that can cause a dangerous infection. And I'm talking about ordinary people. And now imagine what is in the mouth of decomposing walkers, whose diet consists mainly of carrion. And I would be very surprised if the bites of these creatures did not cause blood poisoning. Especially when bitten people don't care about the wound in any way at all. With this approach, you can die from an ordinary razor cut. First of all, this person should have gone to the water, taken soap and clean rags, and then washed this bite. I generally have a theory that the bite of these creatures is no more dangerous than the bite of a dog, and people die from them simply because of their stupidity, allowing the development of infection. After all, The face has all the symptoms of a simple blood poisoning. Well, this theory is confirmed by some facts from the following seasons, which I will tell in the following reviews. Well, the heroes get to the CDC, where there is only one scientist left who solves the epidemic by studying ham. But by negligence, all the ham is destroyed, which makes him drink without snacks, and then completely launch a group of survivors into his closed complex. The scientist asks to take their blood for analysis in payment of the entrance, and also says that they should bring all their belongings, because the exit door will not open anymore. And this phrase remains without attention from the group. Having learned that there is no one but a scientist in the complex, the group, of course, falls down with the spirit, but after a delicious dinner and a hot shower, it becomes easier for everyone. However, a little later, the mood still falls below the baseboard, because it turns out that there is no medicine and how to make it is not clear. Moreover, even the very cause of infection is unclear. Explaining this, the scientist shows the heroes a computer model of the brain infection process, telling the truism that to kill an infected person, you need to damage his brain. Bad news flows when the elder inquires about the purpose of the countdown timer in the main room. To this, the scientist talks about the depletion of fuel reserves for generators and the imminent destruction of the entire complex, along with everything that is inside. Gradually, all systems begin to shut down, provoking the group to collect Maratki for emergency reeling in fishing rods. Only now the scientist locks everyone in the main hall, driven by the thought that instant death from an explosion after the end of energy will be much more humane than the life that awaits the survivors outside. But by turning on his diplomacy, Rick manages to persuade the scientist to release them. Moreover, the scientist is telling some important secret to our sheriff. However, driven by an apathetic mood that everything is gone and the old world will definitely not return, not everyone wants to go outside. In the end, one minor heroine decides to stay, and the others manage to get away from the explosion and survive in order to continue this series for another 10 seasons. That's how we defeated the walkers from the first season of the TV series The Walking Dead. Write in the comments what you would do in the place of the main characters. Show your activity in the form of likes and subscriptions. And finally, if this video gets enough response, I will definitely consider the possibility of analyzing the rest of the seasons.